This is the Modern Mastery Unleashed podcast.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the show. We are super excited today because we have the infamous Charlotte Pridmore. I know Charlotte because I have to say it like that because the day that I met you, oh my gosh, I met Charlotte in a mentorship program a few years ago, and she was just this beaming light of energy, and I can't wait for you guys to hear what she's talking to us about, because it's all about how to facilitate dramatic change in your life. And I can say dramatic, and I think what I mean by that is, those times where you really want to take that leap into that next chapter, that next phase of your life. You're just ready for that change, but how do you do it? You feel it. And so it's funny because in our Vision to Victory Summit that we did last week, human design came into it. And Charlotte is going to just share a lot about human design, positive psychology. I'm actually going to let Charlotte do a quick intro about herself before we get started, because she's just had such an incredible journey. And Charlotte, thanks so much for being with us.
So excited. Thank you so much for a lovely intro. I always get a little blush a little bit when people say but I love it as well. I love it. I receive it gratefully. So hello everybody. So yeah, my name is Charlotte Pridmore. I call myself a success coach, and I used to have a resistance about calling myself that, because at times I called myself that when I didn't feel it. And that's real, and that's sometimes still real now, and I'll always be very real about where I am and what on my journey. But the reason that I call myself that is because that's what I'm obsessed with, and not success in the conventional terms, success defined by the person. So my fundamental belief is that your desires are divinely given, that if you desire something, it's on your heart, it's in your soul, then it's already yours. You've just got to do the human bit and get out of your own way. So success to me is that. It's that if you want to be a really good dog owner, if you want to take over the world, and everything in between those two things, not saying that dog owner, really good dog owner, is the lowest of the thing. I've just got a puppy, so that was just on my head. You know what I mean? Like, whatever it is, if there's anything, any barriers, conditioning, limitation in between where you are and that soul-led desire and the way, that's success. Is that if I can get from where I feel, how I think, feel and behave now, and change that in order to do have the thing that I class as successful, that makes me happy, aligned, full of vitality, enjoying life, that's success. So I'm obsessed with that, and I'm obsessed with that because I wanted that from where I was to where, and I'm still on that journey very much. I don't speak about anything from any ivory tower. I am still on that journey, very much in the trenches sometimes of that. So over the years, I've been coaching for about 8 years now. Before that, I was coaching within another business, so probably all in all about just over 10 years. And it was always, my fascination has always been about human behavior. It's very much in my design as well, which was one of the reasons I started to believe human design, because at first I thought it was a load of rubbish. But one of the things that landed for me was my obsession with human behavior, and why is it that not everybody, but in this business that I started in, everyone was given the same opportunity, the same resources, the same skill sets, the same access to education. Everyone was given the same thing, yet some people soared and some people failed. Why? So that was what started it. And over the years, I've done NLP, timeline therapy, rapid emotional release therapy, all these different modalities, and they've all been great. But then human design came into my world about 6 years ago, and I've never been into star signs particularly. I'm not particularly into astrology, so it was completely left field for me. But something in me kept pulling me back to it. I bought a book, the rabbit hole was too deep, I retreated, and then I just kept being pulled back. So over the last 6 years, I've done 2 or 3 programs as a student. And then last year I did a full mastermind, 7 months, about embodying my own design, because I knew I wanted to help people with theirs. But in order to do that, I wanted to make sure that I knew me inside out. So I did that first, and then I did my certification, which was an absolute hell yes, even though I had no idea how I was going to do it. So we arrive at this point where it became a tool and a blueprint for how you're designed to be. And if so for me, it was like, if I can tap into that and be the truest, most expressed version of myself, then surely my road to my desire is a much more harmonious one. That's the theory. And at the same time, and practice, and at the same time, I was studying positive intelligence, which is a scientific research. I'm a 1 energy, so I'm a 4-1. So my 1 energy means I like process, I like proof, I like logic. My brain has to be involved. And that was, Harvard research based, 500,000 people, 97 different countries. And that was all based on, it's a mixture of positive psychology, neuroscience, behavioral science, and cognitive behavioral science. So it's a combination of those 5 things. So suddenly it occurred to me, this is the longest intro ever, by the way, but will forgive me. My theory was, these 2 things are very much aligned, because in positive intelligence we look at your saboteurs. So everybody has 10 saboteurs. They've identified 10 different voices within our brains that hold us back from what we want to do. And then we have the sage response, which is the other side of the brain, which is big picture thinking, possibility, gift and opportunity, and everything. And I recognized, as I was studying both at the same time, purely by accident, that in our conditioning in our human design equals the voices of our saboteurs. So when you work through each center in your human design, I can tell you which saboteur is related to that disempowerment in that center.
That is incredible. I feel like I need to pause you here, because there was just so much in there. So you guys, if you're listening to this, is your mind already not just blown right now? Because Charlotte touched on a few things, and some of it comes up regularly on the show, which is, what's your definition of success? How do you define success? I love your definition of success. And then secondly, it's you talked about the be, do, have, which also came up in our Vision of Victory Summit. And it is a really it is how you're living, like how you need to live your life. It's not about the doing, because then you get into worker bee. It's not about the having, because then you get into victim mode. It is about the being first. And what Charlotte is talking about, this human design and positive psychology, she's combined the 2 together to make this incredible framework. And I want to dive a little bit deeper, because you're talking about some really interesting things here. You've got like your 10 saboteurs, you've got the human design. You mentioned a few things about it, like your line 1 energy. Maybe just give a little, if you can, give a little brief intro. Like, let's say no one's ever heard of human design before, because it's something that, of course, you found and you're passionate about. I found through you and others, and I'm like a sponge. And I think anyone listening to this episode is like, oh my gosh, tell me more. What is human design?
If you're a 1 energy, you will love all the information. So, okay, just to correct you slightly, so it's human design and intelligence, not
intelligence psychology.
Yeah,
okay,
psychology is part of it, but to give it the correct term. So I call it PhD. So PhD in your own empowerment. I thought of that myself. I'm so proud. Okay, so what human design is? Human design essentially is the science of your aura. So it's what you naturally, how energy moves in your body, what you are, how you are naturally designed to share your energy with others, to use your energy in your life, work, all the things. So you have your type. So there are several different types. Some are more common than others. So there's manifestor, which is the first. There's generator, which is what I am. There's manifesting generator, which is a little dose of the 2. There's projector, and there's reflector. If you don't know what you are, I have a free chart, which I will give you the link for, so you can get your free chart. So if you're type, So that depicts how you're supposed to use your energy. So for example, I'll talk about generators because that's 46% of the population. So a lot of you will be that. Your generators, you are the battery pack, the worker bees, and I mean that in a good way. You've got the access to energy, you have a battery pack. The metaphor I like to use for that is, say you're an electric car and you are plugged into the charging station. So the things that light you up, the things that are for you, when you're doing them, it will feed you energy. On the other side of the thing, if you plug yourself into a tree, i.e. things that you are saying you should do. So shoulds, obligation, things that don't light you up, it will drain your energy. So the whole point of being a generator is to follow your light up, follow what lights you up. And that is from an internal decision-making process. The problem with most people is that we are in our head. So to sum up human design, it's the ability to drop into your body and trust and follow what your body knows over your head. So in human design, you have your type, you have your authority. That's how you're supposed to make decisions. So I'm an emotional authority, means I should never make a decision when I'm emotional. I should always give myself 24 hours. And if I could give you six examples now of when I've made a decision in an emotional state and I've come a cropper. So I have evidence-based stories on how that's the case. So you've got your type, your authority, your profile is more about your personality. So that's the bit that's most like star signs, I suppose, or astrology. You've also got your centers, which is where your magnetism is. So you can have a defined center, an undefined center, or an open center. Defined means it's colored in on your chart. If it's uncolored or white, it's undefined. If it's totally open, it's open. You'll know what that means when you look at your chart. And that is your magnetism. So the things that people naturally feel when they're around you. So I have an emotional authority. I have a defined emotional center. So that generally means that people feel very comfortable to be emotional with me. It means I feel my emotions very deeply myself. It means that I'm good at processing emotion. I'm good at helping other people process emotion. I'm very good at communicating how I feel. So you'll have all these different centers that you're naturally magnetism. You have your natural magnetism in. Your open and undefined centers is where your wisdom is. So I have a completely open ego, which is the center of resource and money and wealth. I have a money program. Now that when you look at it, you think, well, you're not defined there. Exactly. It means I've had lots of different experiences when it comes to money, and I have gained the wisdom and therefore share it. So I attract in my business from my defined centers. I teach from my undefined centers where my wisdom is. So if you're in business, it's a really amazing thing to look at. Then you have your gates, which are all the little things coming out of the centers. They are your gifts. If they're defined, when they're colored in, they're your gifts. You've got your channels, which are your superpowers. And then you go into your planets and your differentials. It's a whole rabbit hole. But the thing I like to say, it's a bit like a layer cake. Get your sponge, your filling, and your icing sorted, and then we can worry about the decoration later. So for me, when I'm talking about human design to anybody, it's about, are you operating from your type and your authority? Stop. If you're doing that, all the other things will fall into place. If you're not doing that, the other things aren't worth knowing. So it's really about, are you following the way that your body's designed to follow your energy, and are you making decisions based from the right place? So the way that PQ came into it, so positive intelligence is a operating system. And the operating system is based on scientific research on what areas the brain light up when we're in saboteur mode. It's your left side of your brain lights up when we're in saboteur mode. And they tested this, again, 500,000 people, 97 different countries. And then so they got people to activate, to be in saboteur mode. You're not good enough, you're shit. I'm sorry, I can't swear. You're not good enough, all the stuff that we say that's horrible to ourselves. And then they do something called PQ reps. So it's called mental fitness. And so there is a practice, it's all in an app, and you practice PQ reps, which is you're building your mental muscles. So it enables you, called the interceptor muscle, to be able to intercept a thought. And I use touch quite a lot, so it's a lot based on sensory, but you can do this. It's a bit like meditation or mindfulness, but you can do it walking. You can do it while you're awake. You can do it while you're in a meeting. You can do it. So if you're in a meeting and you're getting overtapped by saboteurs, you can calm And they showed how on a MRI scan, as you're doing these reps, that the light starts to go down, and then the other side of your brain starts to light up and puts you. So it's basically building neural pathways, and actually how to do that. So, and
That's
then
incredible.
yeah, it's unbelievable. Like, it blew my mind, and I was so excited about it, because it was like, I've been talking about mindset for years, and it's all right to know it consciously, but you can't override that by just having a conversation, or and I, as a coach as well, it was so frustrating, because in a session or in a program, I can be talking and people really feel it, and they're like, yeah, and the minute that ends, nothing changes, really. Let's face it.
Yeah.
So I wanted something that offered continuity, offered practice, offered a tool that people could do over and over time. And in my money program, it's a 12-month program, because that's how long it takes. Like, I'm not into flash in the pan, 3 weeks in, go do your thing. For me, it was important to be there. So the learning piece of that program is only 3 months, but the implementation is 9 months, because I wanted to be there when it all fell apart. Because it does, because that's been my journey, right?
Yeah.
So I wanted something that they could consistently move back to. And it's amazing this last month, because we're obviously in the last month of it, the beta round, that all the messages are like, oh my God, this happened today, and I didn't think that. Naturally, I didn't have to choose it. I naturally thought something different. And for me, that blew my mind. And it's taken me a year to wait for those testimonials without knowing whether they come.
Yeah.
And so that shows me how powerful it is. So for me, it was like, okay, if real success, if real mastery, because like another thing that generators are here for is mastery. In order to master our minds, our energy, and therefore our actions, and therefore our lives, we have to master this as well as our energy, because those things are absolutely linked. Obviously, our thoughts lead to feelings, our feelings lead to action.
Just for people listening and not on the video, you were pointing to your head when you were saying listening, and then energy is like heart.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's getting out of our heads, because most people, we live in our head. We live in our head. And so when we talk about our authority on a human design, that's making a decision based on what feels right. And I was on a session, a reading earlier with somebody, and I said about this, about let's say you've got two people in front of you, and both of those people are going to help you get what you want. And one of them is shiny, as in more successful, made more money, loads of success and loads of testimonials, but something about you doesn't connect with the person. And then there's somebody else here who's not as shiny, maybe not as achieved as much, but you have a real connection. For this person who I was talking to, because she was a 4 like me in her profile, the person who feels better to you you'll get more from.
Which makes sense.
Which makes sense, right? So, but we're so, especially in the online space, let's face it, we are so sold to about, through that lens, I'm really successful, so therefore I'm right for you. Not necessarily. Which really makes us be able to make a decision from an internal place, rather from an egoic, mind-based lack mentality. And I've made those choices many times.
I'm sure we all have. No, I don't think anyone is immune to that.
So for me, it was like PQ masters the mind, because if I can change my mind, and I literally mean that literally, if I can change my mind, if I can change the neural pathways in my mind, if I can stop the habitual negative thought, that means that essentially my energy is therefore affected, and therefore my actions are different, which changes your life.
This is mind-blowing. I mean, this is clearly not this is not the only episode we're going to do with you, Charlotte, because but seriously, everything you're saying is like, everyone who's listening, they are entrepreneurs, they are passion-led, they are impact-driven. And we all know what it feels like to have like a goal to achieve, you're being the person, you achieve the goal, and then you're like, okay, now what? And you're not the same person. Like, you're not the same person you were 5 minutes ago. I mean, just even after this podcast, you're going to be a totally different person. So it's like, I love how you're using human design and positive intelligence, fusing those together to create new neural pathways. I think that's the thing that's really exciting to me anyway, because we're always talking about mastery and always talking about how can you go from I know I need to do this to I'm doing this because I'm being the person. I know myself that well.
And another thing is, I think, I'm a northern lass from, I'm not, I think sometimes human design can be communicated in this sort of very, and then, you do you, very sort of esoteric, the language is very, sometimes I'm like, I don't know what you're saying. Like, what do you mean when you say that? Like, what do you mean? So for me, bringing PQ into it and the simplicity of the language in PQ, and me being a very down-to-earth, very practical, logical person, and it's also in my design that I'm able to take quite complicated things and make them easy for people to understand. I wanted to sort of bring, because actually, I'll come back to that in a minute. Actually, behind the scenes of PQ, it's actually, I mean, I can say this here because I know the audience will be able to take it. I don't say this everywhere. PQ is spiritual awakening disguised as something practical. Because if Buddha says spirituality is the absence of suffering, and in PQ, 98% of your stress, your worry, your anxiety is caused by your thoughts. And so PQ is the ability to turn down that suffering and be yourself and always trust in the fact that there is a gift and opportunity in 99% of situations. So it was like, but if you use spiritual language, there's so much dogma attached to that sometimes people can turn away from it. And Shazad Shemaine, who's the guy who produced PQ, his mission is to help heal the world. And so he wanted to communicate in a way that is palatable. So call it mental fitness. Everyone's in.
Yeah. I love, like, this is the term that I use as well. Like, mental fitness is where we need to be going towards.
And so it becomes this operating system. And the way I like to talk about it is I want to, every time I talk, if I do a reading for somebody, I was like, does this resonate? Give me an example of when this has happened. And everyone goes, oh yeah, this. And then it lands because their mind's on board. You have to get people's mind accepting it. And the problem with sometimes too much spiritual language, and I'm a very spiritual person, but too much spiritual language can turn 95% of people off. I want, and if our mission is to lighten up the world, and I mean that in every way, in every sense of that phrase, then we've got to get this message and this healing and this ability for people to understand that anything negative that goes against their desire isn't true, and for them to believe that and for them to be able to turn that down and move anyway. That's it. I mean, it's actually very simple, not easy, but simple. So I hope that me bringing these two things together, it makes sense to me. it makes sense. And I was actually doing some writing about it today and really writing down all the centers and listing it. I'm just really going through and like, oh my God, like that. Because this has been a work in progress. Like, I'm literally developing this as I'm teaching it, because it was my human design teacher that said to me, PQ would go really well with human design. And nobody else is doing it, so it feels so it's very new. And it was funny because I actually asked chat.gdp. I can never say it. I would say GDP. I said I asked ChatGPT, can you tell me the similarities between human design and positive intelligence? And it was like, well, there is no direct correlation. However, I was like, yes, you see, even chat realizes it. So yeah, it was. It's been a work in progress, but the more I do it and the more people I speak to, the more obvious it becomes of why these two things work so beautifully well together. Because it's mind, PQ, body, human design, and therefore action.
And that is, that's the thing that I think separates a lot of people. When we were talking about the beginning, why are two people that have the exact same resources, but one excels and one doesn't? And, I think we can all appreciate that and sort of say like, yeah, why there is that curiosity, like what does make things, What does make it?
My answer to that question, and what I've realized over time, is that they have all the same external resources.
They
don't have all the same internal resources.
Mega. Yeah.
Because you can take two twins. I always use this thing. You can take two twins, one with a positive mindset, one with a negative, send them into a party, and the positive mindset will see the couple kissing in the corner, the people dancing and having fun. The negative mindset will see the red wine on the carpet, the other couple arguing in the corner. So it's all about, perspective, the lens that they see life through. And, PQ, it's almost like you're going in to change the lens. Because only action, action's let's face it, again, with the spiritual side of things, sometimes the action is the thing that's least talked about. And let's face it, we're still human. We're still having a human experience, and action is the only thing that's going to change anything. But in order to take aligned action, it's right for you, not anybody else, not what everybody else is doing, what everyone else said you should do, but what's right for you and your alignment and your energy. It's short. It's the time. It time bends. That's the quantum leap, right? People talk about quantum leaps. The quantum leaps, you start to do that once you are saying yes to the things that are right for you and saying a hard no to the things that aren't, regardless of external influences and opinions and all things.
And I think if anyone who's listening or watching, if you can take yourself to a moment where you leaned into this, if you have that kind of moment, which I'm pretty sure you would, if it as an entrepreneur, you find yourself in these moments where you've achieved the thing, and you become a different person. But where was I going with that was just knowing like your gifts and knowing those, like you're never, you can feel and you can visualize all you want, but if you don't take the action, you're not going to change. And I think what you're speaking to is that it's not just taking any action, because we can all just take any action. We can all just go on autopilot and just, go with the flow. But when you actually when you actually have the intention behind it and you actually connect, I think for me, what's coming up is, when I left wealth management and I started tuning into, what does Nat want? Like, what do I want? Like, that was a great chapter, but what's next? And then you start to see your world completely change because you've leaned into this aligned action and this energetic, it feels good. And for me, like, I'm a manifesting generator and my emotion is sacral. So if it's like, or that's where I make decisions from. So if it's not a good gut health, heck yes, then you can't do it. And I think you always go to those decisions, like you were kind of mentioning, where you're like, oh, this didn't turn out. And you're like, I knew from the second I said yes to this or no to this that it was not going to turn out. And so those are those repeated examples that you're talking about, that proof.
I think, almost. Yeah, and I think until people have this awareness, this is why it's so important. Because if you think about it, I'm 45, right? I've had 35, 36, 37 years of making misaligned choices that haven't gone well. And so for the evidence that I have built up in my filing cabinet in my mind is, this doesn't work, nothing works for me. No. It's not that nothing works for me. It's that I was making misaligned choices and wasn't supposed to work for me. So what the power I think human design gives you is, I'll give you a really easy example. I have a completely open ego. So ego is the center of willpower and motivation. Before I understood human design, my thing I used to say quite regularly was, you know what, I'll be really on it. I'll use fitness as an example. I'll be really on it for ages, and then all of a sudden just wake up and it's gone. And in that moment, I would beat myself up. I would say, why can't you stick to anything? You're never consistent. You can't, this, everyone's banding around this word consistency, and it used to really annoy me because I just feel like, now I understand I don't have consistent access to willpower and motivation. So when it goes, I just do something else. just do something else. And I don't beat myself up about it. So it's like understanding yourself, how you things, and it makes and also PQ, like when those voices come in, that's okay. It's just you're able to witness it from a different place. So the person hearing the voice is who you are, not the voice. And when you really understand that and you get very acquainted, so I give nicknames to all my saboteurs. So I've got Judgment Judge Face, which is my judge. Everyone's got a judge. And I've got Annie the Avoider, and I've got Helen the Hyperachiever. And so like when they kick in, because I've got names for them, it makes them quite fun. Mm-hmm. And so I'll be like, oh, there she is, piping up. And I call it, so everyone's got a judge. The judge is number one, obviously. And then I call it the backing singers. So also if you want to get your PQ test done, I'll also send a link for that. So you've got your judge, and then who's up front is the lead singer. And then you've got your backing singers, which are your sort of top three that show up in alignment with the judge. And so once you get really super acquainted with them, it becomes quite joyful to recognize them and go, oh, that's all right. It's just my victim. It's just my hyperachiever.
I love that so much. And I love that too, that human design, positive intelligence, the PQ of it, when you put them together, they give you that permission to just be, you know, like, just like you said, it's how many times, I mean, I resonated with your exercise fitness example so much, you know, really, really good, really, really, really good. And then suddenly you have an off day and you're like, oh my God, I'm terrible. Like like, why can't I just stick to this? Blah, 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 blah. And I think a lot of people can resonate with that and can make sort of likened examples in other areas of their lives. But of course, the fitness one is always.
I'll stick with that for a minute, just to take it one step further. Yep. So when you stop the motivation and you don't go to the gym, or you eat something, you know, you have an off day with your food, the beating yourself up then adds to your likelihood of overeating, of sitting on numbing out with TV. So now when I lose my motivation for exercise, I don't stop eating well. So it doesn't really affect me. I don't then go for the biscuit thing because I'm annoyed at myself and sad because I can't stick to anything.
Yes.
So the negative impact in your life, your actual life, is when you don't recognize how you're supposed to use your energy, and therefore then your saboteurs kick in. And the way that you numb out from that is food, Netflix, whatever. Then the negative impact on your physical self and your actual life is far more damaging than if you go, oh, it's okay, I've just lost my mojo, it's fine, I'll eat well, I'll go do some nice things, I'll go walking, I'll do some things else that feeds my soul. And everything works out better.
Is everyone listening to this magic that Charlotte has just like shared with us? Because we're talking about how you make dramatic change in your life. You know, it's the holidays. It's, you know, there's so much energy around. It's a new year. I'm going to do new things. New behaviors, let go of the old, bring in the new, which is a great energy to be in. And I think if you can adopt, and we will share those 2 links that Charlotte was mentioning, so you can take your human design test, and you can also do your PQ, your positive intelligence. There's the 2 links, right, Charlotte? And then I know that Charlotte's also working on some other things. And I just wanted to, before we go there, I just wanted to say that, you know, just to sum everything up, to really make that dramatic change, that whatever that looks like, if you need to make a small change or you need to make like a total 360, 180 in your life, what we're saying is, what Charlotte's sharing with us is that it starts with you, which has always been the message around self-mastery. It starts with you knowing yourself. And you have these 2 incredible tools at your disposal. You have Charlotte here who can highlight to you your gifts, your you know, your how you behave, how you best respond, how you don't best respond, like what do you do in stressful situations. Like so again, the more you know yourself, the more you know how to respond in a way that keeps your energy in a high vibe state. You know, you can be you can be grieving but still be positive. Like we've been talking about that, with people who have lost people this year. But yeah,
I think as well, just to add to that and to round up, the final cherry on the cake for me is, a lot of my work in the early days was around self-love. And what I love about this is that understanding that the truth about your saboteurs are they're actually your greatest strengths. They're just overused. So, for example, my top one is pleaser, which is the conditioning for a generator in human design is people pleasing. So no shit. My top one is pleaser in my PQ. So being a people pleaser gets a really bad rap, but actually it's a really great thing to be. It means you have great empathy. It means you're a kind person. It means you care about other people. It means you want to make an impact. It means you love well. It means you receive, in an empowered state, you receive love well. So being a people pleaser is awesome. It's when it's overused and abused that it turns into a saboteur. So the list of saboteurs, they're not a list of the bad things about you. They're the list of your greatest strengths that you're just overusing, and so they're turning into saboteurs. Likewise, in your human design, your conditioning is your blind spots. It's not it's nothing bad about it. It's just these are your potential blind spots. This is where your condition is most likely. It doesn't mean that it's definitely there. For example, you can be disempowered and have a defined center. It doesn't have to be, sometimes people, especially like projectors and reflectors reflectors don't have any defined centers. And so somebody would look at, when I first got into it, I got defined center envy. Like I thought, oh God, I wish I had a defined ego. Like now I wouldn't change it for the world, because nothing is good or bad. There is no good and bad. It's just awareness. And so when we look at self-love from a holistic place and a whole place, is that I love my whole self, my darkness, my shadow, my conditioning. I love it because I understand where it comes from. I understand that that's my path while I'm here to understand those things. I understand that all my wisdom, all my experience, all my empathy comes from those dark places. There's a really good book called The Dark Side of the Light Chasers. And I did a program sort of loosely based around what I learned from that called Seven. And it was about and it was the 7 deadly sins of personal development. And it was looking into, when you look at your shadow, you can't have one without the other. So if you love your shadow as much as you love your light, then you come to this real deep sense of self-love and self-acceptance, which essentially is PQ, PhD is the tool to help you get there. And so it becomes, this isn't what's bad about me. This isn't what's wrong about me. There's nothing needs fixing. It's just, these are my potential blind spots, the potential conditioning. This is where I'm more likely to have it. And then obviously you look through the lens of the perspective of culture and conditioning and all the things. So yeah, it's a whole experience that is a whole self exploration.
Oh my gosh, I feel like a VIP day or a retreat or something. I've just sort of like, it's just popped into mind. So if anyone's listening and you're like, I want more of Charlotte, and you think this is a good idea, drop it in the comments. But in the interim, like Charlotte, you summed it up so well. I think I think I can say this and say we all want to know ourselves better. We all want to be better. We all want to just, especially anyone who's listening here. So go expand.
Like we all want to expand. It's not even better or worse. It's just expand. Like, how do I expand into the fullest expression of who I am?
I love that you said that, because expansion is actually the energetic layer of mindset in the Wellness 360 framework that I work with. And so, and I didn't really bring it in because I wanted to really emphasize the human design and positive intelligence, but it is like the interconnectedness of all your different life areas. They have these external, internal, and energetic layers. And you're talking about energetics like abundance, which is the energetic layer of finances. You're talking about expansion, which is the energetic layer of mindset. Community, which is the energetic layer of relationships, and I could go on, but like just like spirit of connection is the energetic layer of spirituality. So, you start to put all these tools together and you start to hone in on just a few that, I am personally mesmerized by your work, especially because combine the human design with the positive intelligence. Like, I've just never seen that. And I'm just so grateful that you're here sharing this with our community, because we all are about self-mastery. How do we make it happen, not just think about it? How can we be positive? It's not about rainbows and sunshine. It is just about that lens that you're talking about. Like, how do you choose to see the world, inside, outside, energetically around you? Who is with you in there? So Charlotte, like, we're going to drop mad details about Charlotte, like her website, her follower on Instagram. And yeah, like, we'll definitely have you back, Charlotte, because there's so much around money and success that I know that you're so passionate about sharing. And you just have this just really unique perspective and unique way of doing it, which is why we wanted to have you on the show. So thanks so much.
Thank you for inviting me. It's been a pleasure. I love doing things like this.
Okay, well, we'll see you guys soon. And yeah, see you later.